I often say the energy you give is the energy you receive. And when you're running 26.2 miles and the crowds are out there cheering you on, you're feeding off that energy. When you have loved ones, family, and friends that are so proud of you for taking on this journey and training and preparing your body, that's energy. When you cross that finish line and you're handed that medal and your family and friends are there to embrace you, that's energy. The feeling component is key. And I think that in many times when you're talking about creating walls and kind of not being vulnerable and kind of keeping things up, is the not letting yourself feel. I was hurting, and I pushed and I pushed and I pushed. I didn't let the feeling of wanting to quit come up over me. I pushed through it. That's a physical component. But then when you're talking about the emotional component, the mental component, the emotional engagement piece to that, allowing yourself to feel is that next piece there that really connects people.
Welcome to Hope Starts With Us, a podcast by NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. My name is Dan Gillison. I am your host and I am the CEO for NAMI. NAMI started this podcast because we believe that hope starts with us. Hope starts with us talking about mental health. Hope starts with us making information accessible. Hope starts with us providing resources and practical advice. Hope starts with us sharing our stories, and hope starts with us breaking the stigma. If you or a loved one is struggling with a mental health condition and have been looking for hope, we made this podcast for you. Hope starts with all of us. Hope is a collective. We hope that each episode with each conversation brings you into that collective so you know that you are not alone. So our theme for this podcast is running for better mental health in the Black community and beyond. As I introduce our guests, Ted Metellus and Jeffrey McEachern, I may be getting your last name wrong, Jeffrey, so my bad. But let me just give you a little bit of the background of our guest. Ted as TCS New York City Race Director and the first Black race director for an Abbott World Marathon Major. Jeffrey as a Peloton Tread instructor in both German and English. A gifted athlete running marathons around the world, bringing his infectious smile to Peloton members around that world. And as we were talking before we started the podcast, Jeffrey will be going to Chicago and then he will be going to Japan. So we talk about running around the world. It's real. We want to talk about why running is so critically important. And we really want to hear about your journeys to get you to where you are and what keeps you healthy. And Ted has been called a trailblazer for bringing running into the Black community. That is not something that if you think about our community, the Black community and running, you don't think of them in concert. You don't think of them collectively. So be real interested to hear Ted's journey. This race is coming soon. And Ted, I know you're real busy. And this is the biggest marathon in the world. What does the race day look like for you?
First and foremost, thank you so very much, Dan. Thanks everybody for this opportunity here to share on this platform a little bit about my journey and Jeffrey's journey and experience in this space. So thank you. We were the largest in the world until like a couple of days ago. The BMW Berlin Marathon just broke the ceiling on the number of participants with well over 54,000 runners that participated in their 50th anniversary event. That happened this Sunday. Our own Tracy was out there getting her 6 stars. We were excited about that. The energy was infectious. It was a beautiful day there. But, upon the recording of this podcast, we're approximately 31 days from the TCS New York City Marathon, where we will also be hosting over 53,000 runners. And right now it's crunch time for us. We are zeroing in on all the planning and preparation for the event, hosting over 50,000 people, their family, friends, and loved ones in what is the largest city in the world, in New York, with an event that has tremendous legacy. The very first New York City Marathon was in 1970. When we went to 5 boroughs, that was in 76. So we truly opened up the world in seeing what major urban marathoning can be. So it's lots of meetings, lots of preparation with, working with city agencies and partners, but most of all, working with the teams on the ground that are making sure that we have an amazing race day on November 3rd.
Wow, this is fantastic. And congratulations to one of our colleagues who ran in Berlin. Also, I just want to say that it's so cool that you're already at 53,000 and you're 30 days out. Now, I want to ask Jeffrey, running the New York City Marathon again, how are you feeling about your training and knowing that that clock is ticking and you're about 30 days from the start of the race?
Yeah, it's a good reminder. And also, Ted, it's good to hear it from your point of view, because of course, as an athlete running it, you're like, okay, it's 30 days down, how far you got, what's your training looking like? I will say the journey I love about a training block or a marathon training block in general is just, you never know what's going to come. Life is going to life. So just embracing your training and adapting it to your life and the things that are going on. And I am just excited. I mean, I got to run it last year. It was the most beautiful race of my life, I honestly have to say. And I'm just excited to do it again. I've actually talked one of my best friends into coming with me. So he's going to come and join. So we're just going to have a beautiful time out there. And I mean, New York is such a special city in itself, and it's part of my story. So I'm just grateful to be able to run it.
Thank you very much. I want to come back to ask both of you, how did you get into running? And did you get into it from the athletic side, the mental health side, or was it a bit of both? And when did you realize the benefits mentally? Let me start with you, Jeffrey. When did you get into it, and why did you get into it? And then Ted, when I come to you, I also want to ask you the business side of it.
So for me, actually, about 9 years ago, on October 2nd, I was personally at a spot where I had to make some changes in my life. I quit my job. I was working in the fast food industry. I was a chain smoker. Like, I smoked a pack of cigarettes a day. And I was like, this is not the life I'm supposed to live. And I literally, on that day, I was living on my best friend's couch at the time because I made some poor financial decisions. And, all I had was some shoes that I could wear for running. I didn't have money to go to the gym. And I said, I need to go out and just get my body moving. I need to get out of here. So I started running. It was more of like a walk, run situation. And I just knew I needed to move. And once I started doing that, I started feeling different. I started having time for my own thoughts. I started hearing what was going on in my mind. The physical movement changed so much within me mentally that I had time to think. I found answers. I, found questions that I also needed to ask in life. And I think once you get to experience that, the freedom that it brings, why would you stop? So I kind of just, started then surrounding myself with people, who have already been running, and got to share some more experience throughout that journey. So it was basically that decision about 9 years ago, just that I need to do something different in my life. Because growing up, I never really moved. I didn't do any sports. I didn't play any sports in school or anything. I was not interested in that. My interests were music and just humans. So I kind of focused on that. And yeah, that day changed everything for me.
Wow. Well, kudos to you. You stepped up, you stepped out, and you've been stepping and running ever since. So way to go. And Jeffrey, for our listeners, I probably didn't service your last name correctly. So would you say for our audience your last name?
I appreciate that. My last name is McEachern.
McEachern. Okay, thank you. Ted, let me come to you now, though. When did you start? How did you start? And as you're 30 days out of managing the biggest race in the world, in the most incredibly important city in the world from the standpoint of New York City, with all of the different tentacles, when did you start, and what brought you to what you're doing right now?
Oh, wow. I'll try to be as clear and concise as possible here, because it is a 26-year journey to get to where I am right now. I've been in this space for quite some time, as I noted, but I'll talk specifically about New York Roadrunners, the organizers and producers of the TCS New York City Marathon, and I'll sprinkle a little bit about my running journey in there as well. But my first experience with the marathon here in New York and New York Roadrunners was in 2001. So this was November of 2001, 2 months after 9/11. One of my dear colleagues and friends who I worked with prior to for an organization that raised funds and services through events for breast cancer and AIDS moved on to work at New York Roadrunners. And she reached out to me 3-4 weeks before the marathon. So this is like mid-October, and said, hey, we need some event operations help. We need some production help. Would you be interested in coming on board and giving us a hand? This was my first experience in the endurance event space. I've worked nonprofit cycling events that went cross-country and multi-state. I worked on multi-day walks for breast cancer. I worked on production events and TV things and so forth, but never worked in the endurance space. So this was new and different for me. And when you think of the TCS New York City Marathon, an iconic event, that was the cherry on top. So I went out there and saw this, and my eyes were wide open to what this industry in this space was. Again, this is '01. So it was a different world, and the world really rolled itself out and really showed up that time because we were coming out of everything that was lined up with 9/11 there. The city needed that love. The world needed that love. It needed the arms wrapped around it to show it love and support, and we saw that firsthand. So that was my introduction to the space. It came at me fast, and I stayed with the organization full-time for 3 years and then continued to consult with them for a number of years while working on major triathlons and running events across the United States and overseas. And then I came back home, if you may say, back in February of 2018. And it's been an interesting journey to come to the point that I'm in right now as race director and following in the footsteps of those that did it before me. So when you think about, hey, how'd you get here and how are you feeling? This isn't the first time. So fortunately for me, when you think about folks like, Ted Corbett, who was our first president, African-American, who was the first African-American marathoner to run in the Olympics, he was our first president of our organization. He was one of our founders that helped create the marathon in 1970, which was around Central Park, and they're taking it out onto the streets in 76. And if you also want to talk about the African-American influence to the marathon, you have to think about people like Percy Sutton. So the great Percy Sutton, who was borough president at the time, was instrumental in green lighting and working along with roadrunners and the mayor at the time to say, hey, let's celebrate America's birthday in 1976 with this one-time 5-borough marathon. And let's get this thing going. And New York City needed some love in 76. So here this event happened, and I now get to follow behind the footsteps of Fred LeBeau, Alan Steinfeld, Mary Wittenberg, Peter Chacha, Jim Heim, and now the 6th race director of the TCS New York City Marathon. So it's a collective effort. It's a team effort like any other major organization or any other major project. It is not something that is done alone. It's done collectively as a team, or as I like to say, TTE, total team effort, going all in. And that total team effort is not exclusive to the 4 walls of New York Roadrunners. It's extended, again, to all of our city agencies and partners that all come on board to help amplify this incredible experience, which is the marathon. So, it's been amazing, this journey here. It's not easy, but what journey is easy? There's ups and downs, and you have to navigate through a lot. But again, having a great support system around you with the talent that is around me, our CEO, Rob Simulcare, the rest of the team on the senior team, but then my team that works closely side by side with me, they help us all get to the finish line.
This is fantastic, Ted and Jeffrey. And as we have this conversation, I'm also thinking about optics from the standpoint of me watching the Olympics. I always see a gray-haired gentleman with a hat on, and I would hear the media talk about him as the race director. Going back some years, you probably know who I'm speaking of because I was just a viewer watching on TV, and they would always introduce him. And so that's the optics. That's the view I had. You just did a did you know moment. You talked about Percy Sutton. You talked about the mayor. You talked about some inner workings that many of us in the audience had no way of knowing. What do you hope happens at this marathon about people knowing about the fact that Ted is leading this? And I know it's not about you, but I'm just talking about the fact that there was a black man that ran a marathon in the Olympics. Did you know? Are there any did you know moments that you hope come from this race?
Daniel, you knocked it out the park there with the did you know moments. I think there's a tremendous opportunity for people to learn. And what's really fascinating is folks nowadays, and we could all kind of chop it up to this, think it just happened yesterday. It just happened now. There's the running boom that's currently going on. This is probably the 3rd or 4th iteration of the running boom, And when you sit down and you share with folks an event that's been around since 1970, it transformed in 76 by an organization that started in 58 to now continuing to be this really, really expansive nonprofit organization that's not just doing the marathon, but also doing programs for kids, for young women, to being as inclusive as possible and really welcoming to the community at large. What I would hope people look back and say, let me do a little research on the marathon here. Like, how far has it gone? Let's take a look at the organization that helped produce this and the people that were part of the very fiber of this organization. Who are these folks? And I think the last thing, too, that I think would be of tremendous value is the folks that are touched by the marathon and the marathon journey and the marathon experience. People like Jeffrey, who are now running, and now when I say beaming with energy. And that energy is something that, I often say the energy you give is the energy you receive. And when you're running 26.2 miles and the crowds are out there cheering you on, you're feeding off that energy. When you have loved ones, family, and friends that are so proud of you for taking on this journey and training and preparing your body, that's energy. When you cross that finish line and you're handed that medal and your family and friends are there to embrace you, that's energy. So the did you know moment that I would love folks to do is take a little bit of time out to learn about the sport of running, the industry of running, who has done it before, the diversity that's out there, learning about different groups and clubs and teams that are out there that are really serving these beautiful, dynamic, diverse people that are out there that make up our running community.
Thank you, Ted. And building on that, you guys are incredible. And I want to come back to Black men and health. My bride will tell you that she's got to be insistent that I go to the doctor. And that's not something that we do well. I'm still blessed to have my dad with us at 91 years young. He doesn't want to go to the doctor. It's just something that is a part of our orientation. What have you seen from the aspect of Black men and navigating this space of running and their mental wellness? How do we help ourselves do better with that?
I mean, definitely for me, I have to say, meeting different people of all running groups when I teach classes or when I meet them in person. I think it starts for me with my parents, with my dad, teaching him, the value of vulnerability, sharing, talking, and taking care of yourself mentally, physically. Like, I am so grateful that I get to be my dad's teacher in that sense. And I can feel it trickling down into other parts of my family. I shared a story about my uncle who is HIV positive and talking, about mental health to him and health to him. So I'm really trying to play a big part in that. I think in general, I've seen a change, and that's something I like to provide when I teach or anywhere I go. As you said, Ted, the energy you bring is the energy you will also receive. I provide a safe space for people to talk about these things, to ask these questions, and maybe to guide them in a direction. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I can only guide them, but I'm also giving them the space to do so. So I feel there's a big change because in my journey and running myself and connecting with others, I lead with vulnerability. I lead with that openness. And I've met so many moments and people where actually their family members are surprised that they would talk to me about this, or that they would open up to me about this, or that they come to me and say, hey, in that class, I really felt something, and that's going to make me check in with myself or talk to my spouse and do those things. So I feel what I do with the platform at Peloton, I am in people's homes. I get to be in their bedroom, living room, wherever they are. So it automatically gives a connection that otherwise I maybe would not have. So it gives an entry to talk about these topics and make them aware and, guide them in the direction they need to go to.
That's a true ambassador and that's a true advocate. And thank you, Jeffrey. You teach in both English and German, I believe.
I do. That's correct. I was born and raised in Germany. My dad is African American. He is actually from Newark, New Jersey, and went to Germany for the army. And then when I was born, stayed there with my family. And so I was raised with both languages. So I think and dream and feel in English most of the time, but I also speak fluent German. So 80% or 80 and 90% of my classes I teach fully in German. About 10 to 20% I teach in English from the UK-based studio. So yeah, I can also do some Denglish. We can mix it up. I'm happy to do all that. It's also fun because, a lot of people from English speaking members get to know me, and I mix a few German words in there. So it's also fun taking them on that journey.
That is absolutely fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for the value of vulnerability and lead with vulnerability and providing safe spaces. I mean, this is fantastic. And thank you for doing that. Ted, I now want to come to you.
Yeah, it's a perfect segue. At New York Road Runners, those are the spaces that we really thrive to work at, whether it is, members of our LGBTQ plus community, whether it's our seniors, whether it's our youth. We have an amazing program called Run for the Future, which helps young girls train up to do their first 5K, and they graduate at the 5K. And what's really amazing is we've had everything from Olympic athletes to just this year, we had the Deputy Police Commissioner, Tanya Consuela, African-American woman, mother of 3, and a major role here in New York City, who is also their coach and helping them there. So it exposes people to platforms and opportunities that they would not ordinarily have an opportunity to be engaged with. And, Jeffrey hit it on the head there. We are in a unique position to really showcase our platform of service to the greater community. And when people see somebody that looks like you, walks like you, talks like you, or have been in an experience or in a space like you, then, to your point, they are open and they're willing to be vulnerable and open up and share with you. So when you hear things like, hey, Ted Metellus, what's your story? And I go, well, I'm first generation born in the United States. My family and brothers and sisters are all from Haiti. We're born and raised in the Bronx, New York. I went to school in the Bronx. I went to college upstate New York. There's nothing particularly fancy or amazing and spectacular. And they're like, wait, you're just like me. And okay, so let's talk a little bit about your journey and how you got here and how you navigate through things, because that's going to be of value to me or value to those around you. So those are things that I have an awareness of. And I think it's similar, in a small way to what Jeffrey's gone through and being able to be there in that space. And, you said, vulnerability. And I say, I align that also with being authentic, being truly yourself in that space and whatnot. And then when you mentioned like watching and turning on, the Olympics or looking at major sports and, seeing what quote unquote the traditional looking race director is. And then you got a 6'2" black man that rolls up in the cut. I'm not your average, in many ways. So, I'm hyper aware of who I am and what I am and being authentic and navigating through these, different settings and whatnot. But, I'll tell you a quick story and I'll transition over back to you. But like when you have a name like Ted Metellus, it's a pretty generic name. You don't know what I look like. And many, many years ago, when I was working other events and I would meet our partners, I would say, I'll meet you at the hotel lobby at such and such time. And I would always get there a couple of minutes early and I'd sit there and watch the game play. And they'll look at people walk through the door and be like, are you Ted? Are you Ted? And I'm sitting there and I'm just chuckling to myself. And then I get up and I introduce myself. They're like, wow. You're like, and I'm just waiting. I'm like, yep, I'm Ted. And they're like, well, you're not, you don't look like a Ted. You don't sound like a Ted. I'm like, what does a Ted look like or sound like, Or what they usually clean themselves up with is, you don't sound like you're from New York. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm born and raised. So yeah, I think just being genuine and authentic and being real in the space and realizing that you being in a room is opening up eyes to others and more so those that look like you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I know exactly what you're speaking of in terms of arriving early and just, yeah, I got it. You mentioned young girls. You mentioned the, I think, assistant police chief. NAMI's excited to have Maybelline be the first cosmetic partner of the TCS New York City Marathon and have their members of Team Brave running to support NAMI, including NAMI ambassador Tashia Adams. We're really excited. And while I can't lace them up, when I say I can't, I could, but you have to keep the race open for about 3 days.
Well, Dan, we also are in partnership with NAMI because we do a 5K called a Mindful 5K. So, it's been an amazing partnership with NAMI there to really look at that and showcase it in May, which is, Mental Health Awareness Month. So 5K distance, 3.1 miles, definitely doable. And it was great because talking about creating a safe space for people to get out there when that was really truly rooted in what that event is and truly rooted in what we do at Roadrunners.
Yes, thank you. And I will. I was telling Jeffrey before you joined, I just started running, and that running I'm doing is a 5K. That's the distance of it. So I'll get myself ready for 2025. How about that? If
you want to take it from a few days to a few hours, I'm happy to help you anytime.
Oh, man. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
That's okay. I got you.
Okay. I'm in. Count me in. So, Ted, your authenticity you lead with authenticity. So you don't like labels, but you are called a trailblazer. And you're opening doors for the Black community to run for not only their mental health, but their physical health. It was our Surgeon General that coined a phrase years ago, there is no mental health without physical health. Tell me more about you being called that trailblazer and how you're trying to get more Black men to talk about their own mental health.
Wow. So you're right. I don't ever see myself in that position. You lead by example and you do what is right and good. And, a lot of that is just how you were raised. My parents did an amazing job of really setting us up to be of service and be of service to other people. And that translates over in action. So when I'm in this space, I'm highly conscious of that and really working alongside the incredible people at New York Roadrunners and our DES Department of Diversity, Inclusion, and Social Responsibility team to really see how we can open up the door for more, quote unquote, others to get in and engage. And again, to the earlier point that I mentioned, Dan, with the did you know that New York Roadrunners has Black roots? And really showcasing that so people feel like they're welcome. The other thing, too, is demystifying running. running was always seen as some sort of thing that a small, white guy that runs really, really fast is the only person that does that. And then you get out there and you see all shapes, all sizes, all abilities that are out there going and running and moving, then that really changes things and it really inspires people. So that lines up with that as well. So, while I am seen as the first Black race director of a major marathon, the first Black race director of the TCS Marathon, I won't be the last. There'll be many and more out there, but it is my job and my responsibility to showcase all that has been done in the space by those that represent us. So I think that that's key. When lining it to mental health and wellness, my journey was a little bit different than Jeffrey's when it came down to running. I ran in high school just because it was part of an activity. And the thing that I really loved when I ran cross country and track is the team component to it, really doing something as a team. And I was not a great athlete in school. I was second to last, but I was still out there and we really supported one another. And that camaraderie was really beautiful. And I see it now as an adult running with my friends and colleagues and even when I'm working at now. I stopped running. Being healthy and being active was always a thing because that was just what we did when we were kids. Growing up in the 70s and 80s in the city, like you wanted to be the fastest kid on the block. You wanted to ride your bicycle. You wanted to play, tag and Slushie and all these other fun New York City games that we played as kids. And it was great to be active that way. So I'm grateful for that. But my kick-off into running was when I came to New York Roadrunners, and our office was, it still is by Central Park, but then it was right on Central Park, 89th Street, on the corner, and I see all these people running, and again, you see all shapes, all sizes, all abilities that are out there running, and you see the elation that they have when they cross the finish line, whether it was a 5K or a 5-miler, and I was like, let me get out there and see what this thing's all about. And then I went out, and similar to Jeffrey, it started small and building. I ran based on time and not distance. I'm going to run for 3 minutes. I'm going to run for 5 minutes. I'm going to run for 10 minutes and build and build and build. And I did that. And then I ran my first half marathon in 2007 in Philadelphia. And it was one of the greatest experiences. And I had all the pre-race angst and jitters and so on and so forth. And here I am years later, 44 half marathons in, and I still run and I still enjoy it and I still have the best time. I've run 2 marathons. I ran New York twice in 2008 and in 2013, and it was one of the greatest experiences ever. But what I've now realized I can't even say myself a young adult. I'm middle-aged right now, but middle-aged adult, keeping it together because But the thing that I realized that's been great has been the mental benefits of running. And what we have seen when I mentioned the next running boom, that next running boom came from COVID. You could not go to gyms. You could not be indoors. But what you could do is be outside. And here in New York City, our former Parks Commissioner, Mitchell Silva, who is on our board, who is an avid runner, who just ran Berlin as well, really did a program to close off vehicle access to many community parks in the city. And, took it upon myself to get out every single day and run or walk every day because that was going to be my fresh air for the day. I knew that I was going to be able to get out there and do that. And what I started to see was it was a tremendous mental outlet to let myself just go and breathe and be and go. And with that, I started to feel good. And I then was, sitting in front of my computer for 8 hours, hammering along, trying to keep things going with us during that really, really turbulent time. But I realized that I felt better when I went out for a run or a walk than I did the days that I did not. So I was like, all right, well, I'll run in the morning and walk in the afternoon. And then again, still feeling so much better. So I think now folks are starting to see the direct correlation between the physical movement and the emotional and mental benefits from that physical movement there, where you're moving, you're active, and the endorphins are going. All that stuff lines up and connects there. So again, through action, through example, through movement and activity, folks are seeing that and jumping on it as well.
That's fantastic. And I'll go back to, I was a cross-country runner in high school and had the shin splints and all that stuff. I knew what I wasn't, which was a sprinter. So I was a middle distance runner and I did the cross-country and all that kind of stuff. And then even in college, while I played tennis in college, the running was what would get me in shape to play the long matches. And our son now, who was in Japan, is headed back, he joined a running club. And he joined the running club because of the mental aspects of it. He's with us right now until he leaves. And every day he says, Dad, I got to go out. I got to go for a run. And he'll run 8 to 10 miles. So I understand it. And I love what you said about demystify running, because we also say at NAMI, we want to demystify mental health. particularly for our community. We will talk about an ACL injury. We will talk about shin splints. We'll talk about, hips, but we won't talk about from the neck up. And that's the journey. That's the opportunity. So let me come to Jeffrey for a second. You're known as the chief of good vibes. Tell me how you keep a positive outlook for your members, even if you are having a bad day.
Well, I think, first of all, when it comes to these days, is acknowledging how you feel, being aware of what's going on within you, inside of you. And, healing is a lifelong journey, but I can certainly say when I started my personal healing journey and started to feel the difference of how it can feel, whether it was physical movement, mental movement, I would never want to go back to not feeling that way. So I learned that the only way out is through. That is something I, believe in very truly. So even if I have a rough day, you've got to go through it, but allow yourself to feel it. And if you can communicate it or talk to your peeps about it, write it in a journal, whatever helps for you, but it's going to go past. And just that kind of really helps me. I am the chief of good vibes because I believe every situation that comes, even if it's not one you chose, can teach you something. So if I can sit down for a second and be like, okay, I'm feeling this way. It doesn't excite me, or I don't want to feel this, or I don't want to have this loss in my life. But what is it here to teach me? What can I learn from it? How can I grow from it? Is something that I always will try to sit down and do. And also then on the other side, even if I have a bad day, unquote, I have this community looking at me, wanting to run with me, wanting to work out with me. And that is one of my greatest gifts and blessings. I truly believe that I am on this earth here to connect with humans and to move together and to have these moments. So I am grateful that I get to do this, that I get to connect with the people. So that is something that will always cheer me up no matter what's going on. And I run a lot. I run for charity and I get to run. So every time, something is challenging me, I think of the people that will wish to be here today to, go through these things, or that will wish to be able to move in the way that I can move. And that is something. Every day you wake up in the morning, you can't take it for granted. So, not everything's going to go the way it is. But even a loss, like, of a relationship or something, it's there to teach you something. A loss of a friendship, it's there to teach you something about yourself, set your boundaries, learn new things. That you can pull something to learn and grow from out of everything. And then you're always moving forward, even in the mental aspect. If you fail or you lose, you don't actually go back, you go forward with that learning. So that is something that always gets me through.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. You have several class themes. The inspiration behind one of them, I wanted to see if you could tell us a little bit about it. And that one is like no one's watching. Mm-hmm. And you do that one on the Peloton platform. And that's one of your themes, like no one's watching. Tell us a little bit about the inspiration.
Yeah, so it's called Like Nobody Is Watching, and it's a theme or a series that we just started, a 6-part series. It's a walk plus run series. That is something that we offer on the platform. That means we have 50% of walking, 50% of running. And for me, it is something that we put together. What would you tell me if nobody was judging you? How would you behave if nobody was watching and judging you? What would you dream to do if nobody was holding you back, or your own limitations wouldn't hold you back? Would you sing along to a song that you really like if nobody was watching? Would you dance through your house when nobody is watching? So that's a question I often ask myself in life. And I'm sure we all know this moment. You're at your house, you're in the shower, you're hoovering, your favorite song comes on and you find yourself dancing and twirling along, singing along. We all can't be Beyonce, but we can have that release of something that is good for us. And growing up, sometimes we unfortunately learn to hold back, to not say things, to not, enjoy the things we might enjoy, dancing around or being silly or, playing in a certain way as an adult. First of all, it also adapts what you said earlier, Ted, like demystify running. So many people tell me, I'm not a runner, I'm not a this. So with this class, I want to take them on this journey to start in a walk. And when you feel comfortable and ready with the music that will just distract you that you're even working out, you might be running at some point. And I think there's a beauty to that once we allow ourselves to just try and to just dream. And it also goes back to you can't fail. If you've tried, you're never going to fail. I truly believe in that. And it's just a safe space, a happy space, a distraction-free zone for you just to be, move, and do what you want to do. Movement is different for all of us. So if you can come into this class, enjoy your favorite tunes, trust me, if you try, you will sing along. If you can enjoy your favorite tunes and have some movement, whatever that means to you and your abilities that day or in that moment is absolutely judge-free, as long as you try and just have a good time.
That's fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic. I would tell you that it is inspirational, just the way you lead and you set it up where, hey, let's all get in this together. And Ted, you mentioned the road runners, and we talk about, we have our support groups, and that's where we bring the community together. And the person that comes to that support group, they may have a loved one that's been diagnosed with schizophrenia, or they've just had an episode of early psychosis, or they live with bipolar. They've never been to a support group, and then all of a sudden they look across the table, and the story they're hearing back is their story, and they say, that's somebody that's going through the same thing. When you talk about the road runners, the comparison is community. That it's a collective. What do we need to do to help us Black men talk about mental health and know that they are not alone, that they have community?
I think it's all about finding the platform, either finding it, creating it, establishing it, engaging with it. That's the key thing that's there. So our organization is a nonprofit community running organization. The platform by which we engage is through running, people coming together. So what is that platform that can be engaged? So is it, an organization like BMR, which is Black Men Run, where these guys all come together, and are they having side meetings and programs to talk about, not only physical health and preparation, but mental health and preparation, and being amongst other peers to have navigate through that. There's an organization like BGR is another one, Black Girls Run, which is a national organization as well, that creates that safe space for folks to come together and be in that space. So finding, identifying, and engaging with a platform that you can identify with and connect with, I think is that first big step there, because then you'll be able to have folks that you can talk to and share and say, oh, wow, I'm dealing with this. How do I navigate? I have a child that's going through something. I have a loved one that's going through something. I'm going through something. What are the tools that may be out there that's available to me to help navigate through this? And many of my friends talk about the benefits of having therapy. And many of my dearest friends who I love so much, one in particular who shared with me, therapy gives you the tools to be able to cope and navigate through things, give you the tools to know how to negotiate certain situations. And I think that that's tremendous. And I was blessed to have a woman who I worked closely with, who was my executive coach, aka my work therapist, so shout outs to Cheryl, who always would ask me, how did that make you feel? How did that make you feel? I function in a black and white space. So what does that mean? If it's a 10 by 10 tent, we got to put a 10 by 10 item there. If you're expecting 5,000 athletes, we need to make sure we have ample resources and supplies for those folks with a little bit of coverage on the back end. If we're predicting weather, what are the things that we need to navigate, logistically and operationally? So that's how my brain works from a logistics perspective. And usually I kind of like the feeling stuff kind of goes to the side. And working with her in particular over the years, she's really stressed to me the importance of how does something make you feel? And another shout out that I want to give is one of my dear colleagues who said many, many years ago, the old Maya Angelou line of, you may not remember what I said, you may not remember what I did, but you'll remember how I made you feel. So the feeling component is key. And I think that in many times when you're talking about creating walls and kind of not being vulnerable and kind of keeping things up, is the not letting yourself feel. That's something that I have to navigate through a lot, because you have to push through it no matter how hard it is. And athletes can speak to this. Jeff, like I was hurting, and I pushed and I pushed and I pushed. I didn't let the feeling of wanting to quit come up over me. I pushed through it. That's a physical component. But then when you're talking about the emotional component, the mental component to it, the emotional engagement piece to that, allowing yourself to feel is that next piece there that really connects people.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you made the shout outs and that question, how did that make you, or how does that make you feel? And where I want to go is ask you both mentally, how do you manage? And I know it's running. I know this is a very almost a very logical answer to this question. You're 30 days out, Ted. The anxiety, the stress, how do you manage it? Because you can't necessarily always go out and run, because you're the guy that has to bring all of the different folks together to work through whatever the issue might be that you didn't expect. So how do you minimize the stress and the anxiety?
Oh, wow. How do I minimize it? I mean, there was a very simple question that someone asked me recently, like, what are you most concerned about come November 3rd? And I tell them there's two variables that I have zero control over. I can't control the weather. I don't know what the weather is going to be in 30 days' time. I say knowns but unknowns, like you plan for the knowns, you prepare for the unknowns. So you kind of get that piece in there. And the other thing too is just like, ensuring that we have a safe and logistically sound event. Our marathon's 2 days before the elections. Lots going on in the world currently right now as we talk about it. Lots that weigh on people. So how do you navigate those things as best you can? And you put every fiber of your being there to ensure that any question has an answer, any problem has a solution as to the best of your degree. But to ultimately answer your question, it's like, I know it's hard to get out and run, and I know this is about running, but even if I can get out and walk a couple of blocks and take deep breaths, that is something over nothing. Whether it's meditation, whether it's quiet sitting, whether it's prayer, something to center yourself. That's key and important there. When you have someone in your life, whether it's a loved one, a friend, a homie, a therapist, your boss, a colleague, someone you can talk to and let your guard down and say, hey, here's what's going on here. This is the weight that I carry on my shoulders. I mean, those are just some of the ways that I navigate through all of this stuff. I'll say really quickly to close, no matter how hard it is, it was harder before. Okay, because it was the first time you did it, and it was, or you had circumstances that were beyond your control. So 2 super fast examples that I give people often when folks are like, oh my God, this is going to be so difficult, blah, 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 blah. I go, imagine doing this in 1976, without cell phones, without computers, without all of this technology that's available to us now that really and truly make our jobs easier and connect people easier and communicate to the masses easier now than we did back then. So that's one thing that I say. And then a little bit more of a modern component is my first year as race director was in 2021. We were still navigating through COVID at that time. People wearing masks. We had half the field size that we normally had. So we only had 25,000 athletes. And there were so many unknowns that it almost weighed the knowns out. But you had to put in the work, trust in the people around you, and really and truly stand up strong and say, okay, this is what we're doing, and we're going to double down on what it is that we know truly in our bones. This is our space, and this is what we do well. And if you ever ask me what was the toughest time that I've ever had professionally, it was during that time, but we executed. We had an incredible, incredible marathon that year that celebrated the 50th anniversary, which would have been 2020, but because of COVID, we pushed it to 2021 with half the field size, as the first time race director there. But I didn't do it alone. 1, I had the resources and people around me. 2, and I was in the best shape of my life because your boy was running every day as an outlet to keep himself healthy mentally and physically. So I always just lean back on that. It's just the experience and understanding that these steps have been gone through before. And if it's something you have not gone through, there are those out there that can help navigate your way.
Yeah, thank you. And I know you had to have been in the best shape because you were not multitasking, you were triple tasking. And I know that you gave all kinds of kudos at the beginning to TTE, total team effort, but I also know what you independently have to do as the leader. So we're going to have a wrap up. But before I wrap up, Jeffrey, I want to come to you and say, your marathons, you've been raising money for very important causes and charities. Tell us who you support and why it's important to you to raise awareness that way.
So when I ran my first half marathon in 2016, I ran to the finish line and I cried like a baby because I felt something had changed within me. And it was a moment, I get goosebumps just talking about it. I crossed that finish line. That was a Berlin half marathon 2016. And that's where I lived at the time. And I felt something had changed with me. The training and the running had done something to me physically, but also mentally, or especially mentally. And I got into a space of, okay, I can do this. I get to do this. I would love for the world to experience the feeling of running. So I went kind of on this journey to figure out how can I support others? How can I show others what running is about and how amazing it is? And it kind of came to that I would love to focus my energy on supporting people that need support. Because often I think, I can tell you how exciting running is and I can tell you every day and, my smile and everything should tell it. But some people just don't want to try that and it's not for them, or they say, maybe this is not my journey. But I wanted to help somewhere where it would make a difference for people that need it. So I was like, okay, do I want to educate people? Do I want to, donate my own money? And I was like, but I can run. I can run for the people that need it. I can raise the awareness with my smile, with my joy, and, the energy that I have for running. So I started looking into charities that I could support. And actually, through joining Peloton in 2021. It was the year 2022 that I connected with Red, who's a nonprofit organization to fight AIDS and HIV. I had a meeting where I put out that I would love to work with them, with my team. And 5 days later or 4 days later, Red actually reached out to Peloton to connect in some kind of way. So we just put one and one together, and I've been fundraising for them since. I've ran the Boston Marathon this year, and I'm running Chicago this year in support of them. And the reason I chose that organization is, first of all, because I'm personally part of the queer community. So I thought it was important to support my community. And because my uncle, so when I was younger, I was informed that my uncle was diagnosed with HIV at a young age. And it was always important to me to support him in some kind of way, because my parents growing up always said, you're like your uncle, the way you laugh and talk and smile. So we started building a connection from the age of 18, connecting on social media, on, WhatsApp and all the things. And there's somebody, in the US that until summer of this year, I had never met, but we were so the same that I wanted to make a difference in his life from afar, because he made such a difference in my life when it comes to perspective, positivity, and seeing yourself in someone that you may not have seen yourself in. So yeah, I chose this charity, and it's a great team. There's the saying, nobody will care as much as you do, but I'm grateful to say, working with Red or other organizations, the team really cares, and that's what makes a difference. Some people are there to do the races, to do the fundraising. Everybody helps in a different way, and I think it's important to show people out there, you don't have to be on the street raising your voice. You don't have to take your own money, but there is something you can do. The education you have can inform a conversation for somebody that might need it. You sharing knowledge in any other way on social media or other platforms can help somebody that's in a situation. So I'm trying to bring everybody together, and everybody can do their part in the way that they would like to do.
That is wonderful. And kudos to you. You use the word care. We say at NAMI, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And you demonstrate that. And I wrote something down as you were speaking, servant leader. You're a servant leader, and your servant leadership comes through in everything you do. You both are. And you do it with joy and with a smile. I would be remiss if I didn't do a shout out to Tracy Coulter. Tracy works with us, supports me, and I've never seen her not with a smile, not with joy. No matter what's the fire inside, which I know as soon as the race gun starts, that fire is burning. But in terms of with us, she's always calm and very cool and very supportive. And I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that, because she is a marathoner. And I think that the balance of what she does physically absolutely helps the mental. So we want to conclude with one last question. And as I do that, I definitely want to thank you all for making this investment. But we know the world can be a difficult place, and sometimes it can be hard to hold on to this thing behind me called hope, which is one of the 5 values of NAMI. That's why with each episode, and we dedicate the last couple of minutes of the podcast to a special segment called Hold On to Hope. And it's really very basic. It's a question to ask both of you. What helps each of you hold on to hope?
I'll just say quickly, though, it's being of service. Be of service, where when you see the smile on someone's face or that sense of accomplishment that they have achieved in whatever the journey that they're on. I mean, you talk about a marathon. Well, life is a marathon, baby. So get ready for it. So it's has its ups and downs. It's got its challenges. It's got its loop arounds. But I think that if you could help somebody in any sort of way, where you can, you have to be very mindful of that. Boundaries are key, and being able to understand what you can lift, but where you can help and be of service to someone, and then seeing them achieve that. And sometimes for me, it is something as small as helping somebody understand that they can, in fact, do it. We live in this NDC world, no, don't, can't. And if you tell somebody that they can, and you give them the tools to do so, and then the, in fact, accomplishment, when you see them cross the finish line, and Jeffrey talked about crossing the finish line of the first half marathon and being completely overwhelmed, you help them achieve those types of goals. And whether it is through, physical activity, running and those types of things, that's great. But it may just be something as simple as just a helping hand or a pat on the shoulder, or, hey, you know what, you're doing a really good job today, or thank you. Those things do that. And that's being of service there. And I think that helps people, feel and see hope.
Thank you, Ted. Jeffrey?
I have to shift it 1 second. It's just a few years back, I felt I was losing hope. So how can I reconnect with hope? And for me, something that really changed my life is being grateful, gratitude, sharing gratitude for the things that you have, for the hope that somebody has had in you. Grateful for everything that you get to experience in life, because that then leads the door open for more to come. Or even, gratitude for me being able to communicate what I can communicate, gratitude for me being able to connect with others, because that always opens the door to hope for more to come, or for other people to get inspired and share with other people. So gratitude is a big thing. I promise myself that every day that I wake up, I open my eyes and I literally say it out loud. If I get to do that another day, I will be grateful. And I communicate that. And I communicate it with people, whether it's my members that, I take classes with, whether it's for this conversation. Ted, I could, rant on for another 10 minutes how grateful I am for you without you even knowing. I sometimes ask myself the question, if I wasn't here tomorrow, would the people I love know that I love them? And would they know how grateful I was for every step of them in my life?
That's incredible. And I also want to share with you guys that, being of service and gratitude, what I got through all of this is giving versus getting. That's who you all are, giving versus getting. And I just want to thank you. And we understand that, BMR, Black Men Run, Black Girls Run, there's networks out there to help us with our health, not our physical, our mental, but our health, if we simply just reach out and connect. So what gives me hope is meeting gentlemen like you and interacting with you, because you guys are beasts in this space and you make things happen. And this fills my cup, quite frankly. This fills my cup. So, I'm very grateful. Let me close by saying this has been Hope Starts With Us, a podcast by NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. If you are looking for mental health resources, you're not alone. To connect with the NAMI helpline and find local resources, visit NAMI.org/help, text helpline to 62640, or dial 800-950-NAMI 6264. Or if you are experiencing an immediate suicide, substance use, or mental health crisis, please call or text 988 to speak with a trained support specialist, or visit 988lifeline.org. I'm Dan Gillison. Thanks for listening, and be well.